Hey again, Christian.
Hello again, Andre.
So, what is today's session?
The seventh.
Okay, so it's our second session for question 2 of the speaking section. Let's see.
It wouldn't be the first for the task 3, I think.
Oh, yes, that's correct. Are you 4th, 5th, and 6th? Yes, that's correct. 4th, 5th, and 6th for the second, and 7, 8, and 9 for the third. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so remember, this task is similar to task 2 in terms of the format. You read first, you listen to the, in this case, lecture, and then you need to use those examples that you had in the lecture to explain the concept that you had in the reading. So let's see. Okay. So let's start with this question here. Remember that you have 45 seconds to read the text, so please you may begin reading now.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a business management class.
So, let me tell you about my own experience with this when I was working for a computer company a couple of years ago. So, one day a coworker and I suggested we should give our computers a design makeover, make them look more up to date. Market research was showing that new customers said they would be more interested in buying our computers if they looked cooler. Our technology was advanced, but the outside design looked really old-fashioned. At first, more than half the group supported us. There were a few senior managers there, though, who didn't support the design change. One of the senior managers said, "Our focus has always been on technology. Changing the look is an unnecessary cost." Almost immediately, some of our supporters changed their minds. Even my coworker changed his mind. When I asked him why after the meeting, he told me he didn't want to make a bad impression on the senior managers. He thought that disagreeing with them might jeopardize his chances of getting a promotion by not looking like a team player. What about me? I hate to admit it, but after a few hours of discussion, I started wondering if it was worth everyone's time to argue about this. As more people sided with senior management, I started to feel like I was the only one holding up the vote. Everyone else seemed to think change wasn't necessary, so I voted against my own idea in the end. So we unanimously decided to stay with the current old-looking design. But this decision ended up costing us a lot of money. That same year, our competitor came out with a new design that attracted some of our customers and prevented us from profiting on potential new customers.
Explain groupthink and its effects using the example of the computer company. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so please, you may begin speaking now.
Okay, according to the passage, group thinking occurs when people take bad or irrational decisions because of the pressure of other group thinkings. In the lecture, the professor gives his own experience, example. He tells that when he used to work at a computer company, he and his coworker gave the idea to update the the version or of the computer, but the supervisors then told him that it was not a good idea and that they only have to focus on the technology. So he voted against his idea, and at the end, this costed a lot of money to the company. So it was a bad decision.
Okay, good, well done. So it was a great response, I would say. I can totally see that you got the ideas. Both the definition was correct. It occurs when a group makes bad or irrational decisions. And the way that they were explaining the example was going good as well. But maybe what I could say is try to summarize the ideas a little bit more, because you're going step by step. And even though you did tell me the story, right? So he and his coworkers proposed a fashion change or a design change, makeover. His supervisors weren't in favor of the idea, so he ended up both voting against his own proposal, right? But I think it would be better if you can try to focus on the why, right? Why he changed his vote, because that is the most important part here. He changed his vote. He ended up going against his own idea because he was influenced by the group, right? Because he was following the group. And that part I would say is important to mention. So maybe my suggestion is try to summarize things a little bit more. And go always directly to the relationship between the reading and the listening. Okay. Now for your transition, when the professor gives examples of himself, you could say, in the lecture, the professor gives an example, or in the lecture, the professor uses his own experience as an example. Maybe you could say that. And then you go.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's do this one here. We haven't done it in class, have we? Swarm intelligence?
I think that no.
Okay. So you will have 45 seconds to read the text now.
Now listen to a lecture on this topic in a biology class.
Okay, we can see a great example of this with ants. Ants live in large groups called colonies. They normally move together to get to food sources. And sometimes when ants are moving toward a food source, they'll encounter or find an obstacle in their path. So, for instance, let's say a large number of ants are walking on a tree towards some food on a branch. But when they reach the end of the branch they're walking on, there's a wide space between that branch and the next one, the branch with the food on it. Now, none of these ants alone can cross this wide space to get to the other branch with the food. So, how do they solve this problem? Here's how. One ant walks forward until it reaches the end of the branch, and then it automatically holds onto the branch with its back legs. Then it stretches its body forward into the open space. Now, this comes naturally to ants, and it's a simple action. So then the next ant walks to the end of the branch and right across the first ant's body. Then it holds on to the first ant, and then it stretches its body out into the open space, just a little bit closer to the branch with the food on it. Then, one after another, other ants do the same thing, until enough ants connect together to form a bridge between the two branches. Pretty amazing, huh? The connected ants hold this position, allowing the rest of the ants in the group to cross over this bridge of ants to reach the food.
Okay, explain how the example from the lecture illustrates the concept of a swarm intelligence. You will now have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, please, you may begin speaking now.
According to the passage, swarm intelligence occurs when insects that live in large groups they use group behavior to solve complex tasks. So in the lecture, the professor gives the example of ants, and when they want to cross from one branch to another branch in a tree in order to reach food. To solve this problem, the ants use their bodies in order to construct a or a bridge. So they do this. Each ant goes repeating, uses his body in order to form the bridge, and then the other ants connect. So they solve this problem and they reach the food.
Okay, great, perfect. That was really well done. Now I have no comments because you summarize. I like the way that you first summarized everything. So you summarize the main idea, right? So the ants use their bodies and they connect their bodies and use their bodies to create a bridge between two branches in order to reach food. So if you have left it there, it would have been still okay. But as you had more time, you gave details at the end, right? You didn't go detail by detail first and then ran out of time without mentioning the important thing. So I like that order. I like the way that you summarize the ideas. You were right on time to finish your response, even though it is true that you took maybe a little bit too long in your introduction, right? But I think it was necessary because it was hard to explain the concept in this one. So I wouldn't really say anything. Well done.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure, Christian. So tell me, do you have any questions about this task so far, about what we did today?
In this type of question, after the 45 seconds of the reading, then the reading is going to disappear, right? Or
Yes.
it's going to stay during the listening?
No, it will disappear.
Okay. Okay, and then it's all clear. Thank you.
I'm glad. Then I will see you tomorrow in class.
Okay, bye bye. See you tomorrow.
Hey, Mikaela. Hello?
Hi.
Hi there. So, what is today's session?
Third one.
Okay, it's your third session. That means that it's our last session for practicing question 1 of the speaking section. Let's do that. Okay, so let's start with this question here. It says, do you prefer to have an early dinner around 4 or 5 p.m. or to have a late dinner around 8 or 9 p.m.? Provide specific details to support your explanation. You will now have 15 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so please, you can start speaking now.
I prefer to have an early dinner since it's more healthier. For example, many scientists recommend us to have early dinner instead because our digestive system works better in these hours, and it permits us to sleep better and not to have stomach problems.
Okay, great, well done. So it was a great reason. Careful though, it's not more healthier, it's just healthier, right? So I prefer to have an early dinner since it's healthier. Now, as for your example, I mean, you talked about how like scientists recommend people to have an early dinner because of the digestive system, but honestly, maybe it was a little bit too complex, unnecessarily complex. In your example, you could maybe talk about yourself, right? You could say, for example, usually I get home around 5 p.m. and I make sure that I prepare dinner in at least or in at most 30 minutes, and I need to have had dinner by 6 p.m., let's say, right? And then you can say everything you said, so it allows us to sleep better, but make it about yourself. That way I can sleep really well, I can have a good night rest and do everything you did, right? And I feel that I'm better able to digest the food. Or you could maybe talk about an experience where you ate dinner late and you had a terrible night, right? You could say, for example, last Saturday, I had a birthday dinner and it was very late at night. We ended up eating at 11 p.m. Unfortunately, that made me feel really sick as I'm not used to eating that late. I couldn't digest the food well and I couldn't sleep the entire night, for example, right? And that will maybe illustrate it. So just give more details, be more specific, but it was good. It was not good. Okay, then let's do
Okay.
another. Here we have, do you prefer to read printed books or do you believe that audiobooks are a better choice? Illustrate your argument with reasons and supporting details. You now have 15 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so please, you may begin speaking now.
I prefer to read printed books since it's more efficient. For instance, when I read books, I read at my reading. One time I heard an audiobook and it was so slowly, and it wasn't more efficient because I didn't have time at that moment. And
Okay, not bad. I like these type of examples you're given because you are good with the grammar. I mean, you have the grammar, you are good with tenses, so you should definitely use them. I like the response. You just maybe trying to sound more confident. You're doubting yourself too much when you're speaking. You're kind of showing, you're letting it show too much. So even if you have no idea what you're saying, make it sound like you're really confident, like it's true. Okay, because you're kind of doubting every word you say. Just work on your confidence, but it was good.
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Our question here says, some people choose to exercise right after they wake up before going to work, whereas others exercise after work in the evening. Which do you prefer? Include some examples and details to support your answer. You now have 15 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So please, you may start speaking now.
I prefer to exercise right after I wake up, since when you wake up, you have more energy. For example, I went to the gym, and I do it in the morning, and I feel that I have energy. But when I try to go to the gym in the afternoon or evening, I don't have energy and I don't want to do it. And it's less healthier. It's less health because the objective is to be healthier.
Okay, is less healthier, right? Instead of health. And okay, it was good. Now, don't forget your details. I mean, your reason was good. You have more energy in the mornings, but give details, right? You go to the gym in the morning, you have a lot of energy, but tell me what time. What time in the morning do you go to the gym? What do you do before? For how long you exercise, right? I need to hear those details. Those are really important. So I would only say that. Just don't forget to give details. But other than that, I think you're doing really well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, of course. So let's see. Okay, the question here says, do you agree or disagree with this statement? College students should not be required to take general education courses. Make sure that you give specific reasons plus supporting details in your argument. You now have 15 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so go ahead, please.
I strongly disagree that college students should not be required to take general education courses, since it's important to take general courses to remember the basics of the subjects. For instance, when I take the biochemistry courses, I have to remember what is general chemistry or biology, and I didn't take biology, so it learn or to learn more about what biochemistry is.
Okay, good, well done. So now you had great details in your reason, I'm sorry, your example. But maybe I think the problem here was that you didn't understand pretty well the question, because the question was about learning about the basics, right? So it was just like, if you are a chemistry major, should you be taking courses like history, math, or literature, right? So taking general education courses on a little bit of everything. So that was the question. Careful there. But if the question had been different, then it would have been a good response. Okay. Hi, Erasmo. I think your session is in 3 minutes. So if you could please join again, it's 9:35.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So our next question here says, explain whether you disagree with the following statement. Children should not be allowed to play video games. Then give specific details in your argument. So please, you may start preparing your response now. Okay. So please start speaking now.
I strongly agree that children should not be allowed to play video games, since it's a waste of time for them. For instance, children can be other things that play video games, like play with other children. Like my cousin, she play with our neighbors, and he learned how to communicate with other kids, that it's important to their life.
Okay, good. Well done. What do you think of your response? What would you change? Would you change anything?
Maybe the example, more details, like what games he plays.
Yeah, that could work. You can always make up a name, right? But yeah, I would say that it was okay. Yes, maybe you could have given more details, but it was completely related to what you said. And I like the way that you explained the story. Your grammar was really good as well, and it was illustrating what you said. They need to learn how to communicate with other children. So it was good. I wouldn't really say anything about your response.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So do you have any questions about this task so far? Today was our last session for question 1. So do you have any questions about this task?
No.
Okay. Then I will see you tomorrow in class. Okay. Hi there, Erasmo.
Hi, how are you going?
Yeah. So this is your first session, right?
Yes.
So during these speaking sessions, what we're going to be doing is practicing the speaking section. In the speaking section, we have how many questions in total?
Sorry,
How many
I don't
questions?
no,
I was asking,
I don't have a question.
no, I was asking you, how many questions do we have in the speaking section in total? How many tasks or questions?
How many tasks?
Sure.
I 4 tasks, and we start to studying the number 4.
Exactly. So since we have 4 tasks or 4 questions in the speaking section, and we have a total of 12 sessions to work on the 4 of them, we're going to be using 3 sessions per task. That means that today, the first, then the second and the third sessions are going to be for the first question. Then the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth will be for the second question. Then the seventh, the eighth, and the ninth will go for task 3. And well, actually the same, but we're going to start with question 4 since we already started with question 4. Okay? So three sessions per question. And I'm just going to ask you 2 things. The first one is that you keep track of the number of sessions that we're in, because I will be asking you, what is today's session? And you tell me so that I know what to do. And second, you need to finish your 12 sessions by the time that you finish the course, please. Because after that, you won't be able to continue taking. So is that okay? Do you have any questions before we start?
No, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. Then let's start practicing question 4. You already know what to do. I'm going to play our first lecture. Please take notes.
Now listen to part of a talk in an education class.
One of the hardest parts of teaching is keeping your students' attention. Now, the key to doing this is understanding the concept of attention. Basically, there are two types of attention. The first type is active. Active attention is voluntary. It's when you intentionally make yourself focus on something. And since it requires effort, it's hard to keep up for a long time. Okay, so let's say you're teaching a biology class, and today's topic is frogs. All right, you're standing at the front of the room and lecturing. A frog is a type of animal known as an amphibian. Well, this isn't necessarily going to keep the students' interest, but most of them will force themselves to pay active attention to your lecture, but it's only a matter of time before they get distracted. Now, the other type of attention is passive attention, when it's involuntary. Passive attention requires no effort because it happens naturally. If something's really interesting, students don't have to force themselves to pay attention to it. They do it without even thinking about it. So, back to our biology lecture. You start talking about frogs, and then you pull a live frog out of your briefcase. You're describing it while you hold it up. Show the students how long its legs are and how they're used for jumping, for example. Then maybe you even let the frog jump around a bit on the desk or the floor. In this case, by doing something unexpected, something more engaging, you can tap into their passive attention, and it can last much longer than active attention. As long as the frog's still there, your students will be interested.
Okay. Now, using points and examples from the talk, explain the difference between active and passive attention. We'll now have 20 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So please, you may start speaking now.
Okay, the lecture discusses the difference between active and passive attention, the difficulties to teach the student to learn different topics. First, the professor explained the active attention, when the student put an effort to understand or to learn something. Then the passive attention is when the student don't have to make any effort to learn or to stay with attention. In this case, the professor or teacher are make different something to engage the student.
Okay, great, well done. So I like the fact that you, and I mean, the content was great. You understood both topics and you were able to tell the difference between the two of them. So some comments I could make first in terms of content. Don't forget to mention the examples because they say using points and examples, right? So you need to mention the examples given for both. Now you wouldn't have time to mention the examples unless you save time in the introduction. Your introduction was too long. You just need to say, the lecture discusses active and passive attention. Leave it there. And then you tell me, use the template, don't forget. First, the professor talks about active attention. And your definition was great, which is when the student needs to make an effort to pay attention. For example, this professor gives the example of a biology class where the professor is explaining or the teacher is explaining the definition of frogs. The students are not interested, but they are forcing themselves to pay attention. In contrast, passive attention requires no effort, right? So in the biology class, if there's a live frog jumping around, students will and voluntarily pay attention without even realizing, right? So don't forget your examples. The examples are important to mention. Save time in the introduction. Don't explain anything, just mention the title that you have in the question. That for content. And for grammar, I see that you're struggling with conjugating the verbs. The lecturer discusses, the professor explains, a student doesn't, the professor is instead of the professor are. So careful, singular and plural. You need to practice conjugating the verbs. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So the professor, how I have to say the plural and the singular, which are my mistakes?
For example, you said the professor explained, right? Instead of the professor explains, conjugating with the third person. You also said the student don't have to make an effort, I think. Instead of the student doesn't have to make an effort.
Okay, doesn't have. The student doesn't have.
At the end, you said the professor or teacher are using strategies to keep the attention, something like that, instead of the professor is using strategies.
Okay.
So that's what I mean with those are the verbs, right? Conjugating the verbs are, explains, discusses. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I had to practice that.
Oh, look for another one. This one.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
Today we'll talk about how companies determine the initial price for their products. By that I mean when they first introduce a product in the market. There are different approaches, and today we'll discuss two of them. They are quite different, each with their own advantages. One approach, or strategy, sets the initial price of the product high, followed by a lower price at a later stage. Why? Well, when introducing a new product, companies want to build a high-quality image for it. Products that cost more are believed to be of higher quality. So, during the early stages of the product life cycle, companies can make very high profits from consumers willing to pay more for a high-quality product, and although consumers know that prices will eventually go down, they are also willing to pay more to get the product sooner. This approach works very well with, innovative high-tech products, for example. Now just think about when video recorders or video cameras or even cell phones first came out. They were very expensive, but then they became much more accessible. Another very common strategy sets an initial price low. Now this happens when the market is already saturated with a product, and the strategy is to undercut its competitors. Say there's a newly starting computer maker trying to gain market share. So what do? Well, they offer a computer at an affordable price, lower than existing brands. By doing this, the company appeals to new consumers who weren't probably even interested in getting a computer, and, well, of course, to existing consumers who might now be tempted to switch brands. Now, how does this company make profits with its low-priced computer? Well, one thing that's often done is to encourage their customers to buy accessories also manufactured by them, like printers or software, for example.
Okay. Now, using the points and examples from the lecture, explain two pricing strategies described by the professor. You will now have 20 seconds to prepare your response. Okay.
Sorry, just a minute. Sorry, miss.
Sure.
The dog.
No, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The lecture discussed two strategies to put price in different products or new products. First, the professor explained how high prices strategies stay in the different product. And in contrast, and for example, these prices are high because you expect high quality in this product. And in contrast, the low prices strategy is to attract the customer to buy and prove this product.
Okay, great. Hold on. I like the transition that you used. Your concepts were good, but don't forget the examples. You did say, for example, but you were missing the details, right? They talked about the camera. When the camera first appeared, they said the initial price very high, right? Because it was new technology. But and in the other one, setting the price low initially to outweigh the competitors, the professor gives the example of a company that's starting to sell computers. So don't forget those details. That's the only thing you're missing, your examples. Okay,
Okay.
only that. So what do you think? Do you have any questions?
No, I had to practice more.
Okay, so yeah, it's just about practice. Then I will see you tomorrow in class.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.